Hey guys, Anthony here. It's Tuesday night, March 7th, 2017. And tonight's video, we're going to discuss prepping. I'm going to talk about some current events in general. And I'm going to read some items from the SHTF school. If you've watched my channel, you know I highlight some things that Selko posts on his school regarding different scenarios that he went through, and the one we're going to look at tonight encompasses his ordeal. It kind of gives you an overview from the beginning on how it started, how they got caught by surprise, and some of the questions that he answers in it. If you listen carefully, will give you some very good clues on what you need to be prepping. And believe it or not, guys, it's not super complicated, this whole prepping thing. People make it out to be more than what it is, but basically it's making sure that you, your family, your loved ones, your close friends, those in your group are prepared to meet any SHTF, WROL, Teotihuacana, whatever that's called, Teotihuacana scenario that can come their way. Will you be successful? Will you be 100% in everything? No, you won't, but you have to get ready. I'll give you an example as a guy at work that works with me. And over the years, I've been prodding him. I even bought him a few items over the years, basic stuff like a fixed blade knife, a pot, a small stove, to try to get him to prep. It's just him and his, he has a 13-year-old son. He's divorced. And he's the type of guy that says, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to get ready, and he never does it. So he's constantly talking about it, but he's never doing, never acting, never putting a plan into place. And I told him the other day, I says, hey, you know what? You're running out of time. If you look at current events and what's going on in our country and around the world, you could almost feel it. If you're really sensitive to it, you could almost feel that there's something in the air that's going to happen. Somebody's going to cause, or some group or some entity is going to cause something to happen, and it could have a mushroom effect, and it could take us all by surprise in this country. And then when that happens, gathering basic things that you take and I take for granted every day, it's going to take us all by surprise. And those basic items are going to be not only hard to get, but they're going to be worth a lot of money. He talks about, and what I'm going to read tonight, he talks about a can of beans in the beginning of this SHTF, or somebody that was able to gather these was selling them for $30 to $40 a can of beans. What's this, $2 maybe? $30 to $40 equivalent in SHTF. Think about it. Think about a book of matches, a Bic lighter he talks about. He'll talk about alcohol, basic alcohols. Doesn't have to be name brand, doesn't have to be Stoli's or some of the big name brands of vodka or whiskey or whatever. It could be a low grade, a low level brand that doesn't sell much, but it's still able to be used for disinfecting, starting a fire, whatever. Trade, more importantly, to barter. Priceless in an SHTF. So, why don't well, before I start reading this, let's talk about some of the things that are going on in our country. We just had a presidential election. We have a new president. It seems as if the country, the media, Many people in academia are having nervous breakdowns because Donald Trump is president. Why is that? Partly because they didn't think it was going to happen. They didn't think that the common man and the common woman in America were going to come out to vote and screw up all their polling and all their forecasting and all their buddy stuff that they do. It kind of took them all by surprise, and they're having a hard time with that. And when certain people and certain groups have a hard time with things, they can make it difficult for everyone else. They'll do it purposefully. If I can't have my way, I'm going to bring the whole house of cards down. That's what we're facing today. That's what we're facing right now. We're facing people, government, media, academia, normal everyday people. We're facing people, and the Hollywood types, not all but many. We're facing people that because they didn't get their way, you are going to suffer. We'll cause something to happen. We'll stop everything in its tracks that the president wants to put through. We'll stop him from making due and good on his promises to the people. The people spoke in our country. And now there's part of the country that doesn't want to listen. That's why I said the battle lines have been drawn. The masks are off these people and they're out in the open. Now is when you need to be ready. And now is when you need to be monitoring everything, current events, world events, things that can happen in a moment's notice. Because, guys, it's very serious business. And when these people are cornered, when they're accused of doing things that they don't want to be accused of, or they want to misdirect it, they're capable of almost anything. So we need to be ready as a nation that wants liberty and justice and laws to be followed and the people to be protected by the government, one of its key functions. We need to keep an eye on what is going on. We need to keep a pulse, if you will, on what is going on, because things can change in an instant. And so with that, think about where you are right now. Think about if there was an SHTF situation, a collapse, a situation without rule of law in your area, your town, your city, your state, part of the country. Think of what you would need. Think of what you would do, the people you would talk to, the normal people that you see every day, your neighbors, people at work. Those people may become your enemies. It's true, they may become your enemies, and they probably will. It's happened before, and it'll happen again. So with that, let's look at some of this. I may break it up into 2 videos or 3 videos even, because I'm not going to read it word for word, but I'm going to focus on certain things that I want to get across. Anyway, Selko was a gentleman that went through an SHTF in his country. He's from the Balkan region, and this was between 1992 and 1995, where he went, his family, and his whole city of 50 to 60,000 residents, went for 1 whole year without electricity, fuel, running water, real food distribution, or distribution of any goods or any kind of organized law or government. 1 year. Think back a few years ago to Hurricane Sandy that hit up north. Think if that went on, the aftermath of that went on for 1 year, what would have happened? Those of you that went through that storm and suffered through it saw firsthand that in just a day or 2, things fell apart. People were not who you thought they were. One day you were having coffee with them, the next day you had your doors locked and were looking over your shoulder because you thought they may be out to get you. So they did not have any organized army or police force. There was groups of defenders, actually anybody who had a gun, to fight for his own house and his own family. So as I go through this, think to yourself, what he's saying was important to him. That's probably going to be what's important to you and me in this type of situation. Some of us were better prepared, but most families had food for a couple of days. Some of us had a pistol, a few owned AK-47s when it all started. Anyway, after a month or two, gangs started with their nasty job. The hospitals looked like a butchery, police force vanished, and 80% of the hospital staff went home. And this was only a short time after the SHTF happened. He says, Selko says, he was lucky. He had a big family, about 15 members in one big house where they all got together in one house. They had, at the time, 5 to 6 pistols and 3 Kalashnikovs when they pooled their weapons together as a family. So we lived and survived, he says, most of us. He says the U.S. Air Force did drop MREs every 10 days. God bless the USA for that, he says, as the city was surrounded by the enemy. It just wasn't enough, though. Some people had little gardens, some vegetables, but most did not. After about 3 months, rumors starting about the first deaths from starvation, deaths from low temperatures. It gets cold in that region. We stripped every door, window frame from abandoned houses for heating. I burned all my own furniture for heating. A lot of people died from diseases, mostly from bad water. 2 of his family members died from bad water. Here's a $20 water filter that could do well over 100 liters. It's also got a charcoal insert to get out some chemicals. What's this worth in that type of situation? $20 now, but worth a life maybe in an SHTF like this. We use rainwater to drink. Several times I ate pigeons. Once I ate a rat. Money was not worth shit, he says. We traded things. The black market worked. For example, 1 can of corned beef, you could have a woman for a couple of hours. It sounds bad, but it was a reality. I remember most of that women were just desperate mothers. Candles were important, lighters, antibiotics, fuel, batteries, rifle ammo, and of course food. We fight like animals for that. In a situation like that, a lot of things change. Most people turn to monsters. It was ugly. Most people turn to monsters, he says. It was ugly. So think about where you live, who you live around, the people that you just maybe nod to or wave to. Those could be people that can be your worst enemy in this situation. He says strength was in numbers. If you were alone in the house, you would probably be robbed and killed no matter how well armed you are. So a lone wolf, we talk about that in some of my videos, and people chime in and out about lone wolves. He's really adamant about, and he witnessed it firsthand, that lone wolves really did not survive in the long run in the city where he was anyway. So the war ended thanks to America, and again, God bless America for that. It is important. It is not important which side had right in that war. He says it was 20 years ago. Believe me, it was just like yesterday. I remember everything, and I learned a lot. Me and my family are prepared now. I'm well armed, stocked, and educated. It is not important what's going to happen, an earthquake, a war, tsunami, aliens, terrorists. He's ready for it. And from my experience, you cannot survive alone. Strength is in numbers. Be close with your family, prepare with them, choose your friends wisely, and prepare with them too. At the end, okay. So here's a question that somebody asked him. How did you get around safely? So he says, actually, the city was broken in something like a lot of street communities. In my street, which was 15 or 20 houses, we organized patrols, 5 armed men every night to watch for gangs or enemies. So in his street of 15 or 20 houses, they had 5 armed men at all times, especially at night, to watch for gangs roving in, other communities that may have been coming in as raiders, whatever, watching the community, watching those 15 or 20 houses. They traded things between people in that street. 5 miles from my street, there was one street with something like organized traders, but it was too dangerous to go there. It worked only during the nighttime. During the day, it was Sniper Alley, and you had more chance to be robbed there than to trade. I used that street only 2 times, and believe me, only when I am in bad need of something. Another question, what about wood? Wood. It looked like there are many forests around your city. Why did you have to burn doors and furniture? So he says, in my region, I have a lot of woods and forests when you check the map. But I lived in a city that was surrounded by areas with mostly rock and a few bushes. The enemies were also really close, so we could not get to any bigger forest. So he's basically saying they were surrounded and kind of stuck in the city. They didn't have a chance to get out into or to get to the forest to get more firewood. Yes, we had some trees in my city parks, fruit trees. Most of the city is buildings and houses. But believe me, all the trees in the city is going to be burned very fast when you don't have electricity for cooking and heating. After that, all you have is furniture, doors, wooden floors, etc. And believe me, that stuff is going to burn fast too. There was almost no car use in the town because of the roads jammed with ruins, abandoned cars, destroyed houses, stuff like that. And petrol, which is gas, was like gold. So their city was shelled unexpectedly and surrounded. So the people at Selco and the people in the city were basically trapped in that city. Once it started, you really couldn't get out. They had it circled and surrounded. So their SHTF scenario can be a lot different than a typical one here in the U.S., but this scenario can happen as well. It's not out of the question. If you needed to go somewhere, I almost always used the nighttime. I never went alone. I also never go in a big group, only 2 to 3 man maybe. We were always armed, very fast, always in the shadows, weaving through the ruins, rarely open on the street, actually always hiding. So they didn't walk out their door to their neighborhood or their house and take the shortest route to where they were going. It may have taken them hours to go just a short distance because of how they had to hide and to get around at night without being seen and drawing attention to themselves. And yes, there were organized groups of gangs, 10 to 15 people, sometimes even 50. But also there were normal people like you and me, fathers, granddads, decent folks who robbed and killed. There was not too much good and bad guys. Most of it was gray, ready for everything. So what he's saying here is that normal people before this event happened that he's talking about, fathers, granddads, decent folks in a regular, without SHTF, a regular normal society, robbed and killed in this time period. They turned into monsters, he said. Did you prep, and what kind of skills did you need? Another question says. We used what we had. We were not prepared for the situation. We did not know about prepping. So you can imagine, we go back to the Stone Age, what would happen. We just used everything we had. One example he had a propane stove with one of those cylinders, and used for cooking and heating. Only Selko didn't use it for cooking and heating. He figured out a way that he could refill disposable lighters with it. And then those lighters were worth a small fortune on the trading market. So he used his fuel bottle that he had for making lighters. Somebody brought him an empty lighter. He filled the lighter with gas. Usually it took one can for that. Usually I took one can for that, or one candle, or whatever he offered me at the time. So maybe a lighter would be a can. He would get a can of food or a candle in exchange. I hope you understand my example. He says my English is poor. He worked as a medic in his normal job, and his knowledge is what he used for a thing of trade. So having a skill like a medic or something else, a doctor, a nurse, a mechanic, a carpenter, that skill could be what you trade for in SHTF. So what's in here may be your best prep. He says, yes, be trained and educated. In times like that, it's worth a fortune. Know how to fix things. All your goods can be exhausted in one day, but your specific knowledge can be your food. I mean, learn to fix things, shoes or people, whatever you can, he says. He says he gives an example. A neighbor of his made some kind of oil lamps in a glass with a piece of rope, and he was not hungry. He never showed him how to do it, but he always was able to trade what he made for food or whatever he needed. So this neighbor made it through also. His point is to learn things. People always need somebody who knows how to fix things. It was not a survival movie. It was ugly. We did what we have to do to survive. Nobody wins. We just survived with a lot of bad dreams. Okay, here is a question. Who was your support group? My group was only my family, my blood relatives like uncles, grandmother, etc. In my street and in my own trips, I had some close friends, but my best friends was my family. I've never took a stranger in my close group. Let's stop there, and then my next video I'll pick up on some more of the questions. But the point I wanted to drive home tonight in this video was that you don't need a lot of fancy gear. You don't need a $1,000 rifle. You may only need a $400 rifle and $1,000 worth of ammo instead. Understand that things like, and I have a video coming out on this small stove stand and alcohol burner that sells on Amazon for about 13 bucks or 14 bucks right here. I have a video coming out on it. I tried it out last night. It's functional. It comes in a bag. And for another 5 or 6 bucks, I got a fire steel. And for basically a $20 bill, I'm able to cook and start a fire. Add to that some fuel that I pre-store and buy maybe a couple gallons of alcohol, denatured alcohol, heat, the product called heat sold in auto stores that can be used in these stoves. And you got yourself way ahead of the game for not a lot of money. 20 bucks. 20 bucks. I don't know. 10, 15, 20 bucks for a decent folding knife. Many even less on those late night shows. They sell 100 of them sometimes for $13, $14, $15 canteen cup. You don't need an $80 flashlight. A simple store-bought one, battery operated, a headlamp, a cheapo headlamp. Light is light. Here's a $10 or $12 solar lantern. Renewable. I can put it out in the day and use it every night to light my room up in SHTF. We talked about alcohol. Tomorrow, in tomorrow's video, he's going to talk about things like coffee, matches, how important these things were for trade to have, for morale, coffee for morale. No coffee in the morning. I mean, your whole environment can be turned upside down. Things that don't need to be refrigerated, like ghee for butter. Okay? We already showed you the can of beans, what it's worth, food for your stomach. What do you think this can of wild mackerel would be worth? Well, in normal times, right now, it's worth about $3.50 a can. In an SHTF with somebody starving, and you had something like this to trade for something that you needed, this can get you a lot. Again, it doesn't have to be something as expensive. It can be something cheaper, like a tuna can or something. Putting together kits now rather than later. A simple medical kit. Priceless. You're going to hear him talk about tomorrow. Most of the deaths and most of the injuries were due to poor hygiene and not being able to treat medical problems. So, medical kit, basic medicines, antibiotics, very, very important. And guys, I know I'm rehashing a lot of this from other videos, but there's a lot of people that just don't get it. And really, I don't, these videos that I'm doing right now are not so much for people that have never prepped, because if you've never prepped and you're seeing what's going on in the country today, right now, and you've never prepped, nor do you feel an urge to, you might as well just shut this. Actually, you're probably not even watching this. You're probably watching one of the sitcoms or one of the stupid CNN programs or MSNBC or some of the other trash and evil that they're spewing on TV. Your mind is not even on that stuff, because in your mind, you think if something did happen, the government's going to come and rescue me, or the local authorities are going to come and rescue you. Well, I hate to break the news to you if you're watching this, but nobody's going to come to rescue you. You're going to be responsible for you and your family. And imagine the day comes when your kids look in your eyes and say, "Dad or Mom, what did you do when you should have been prepping and preparing for this disaster that's upon us right now?" So with that, I will cut this video, and we'll continue this tomorrow on these topics of prepping, the importance of basic items, the importance of knowledge and skills, and the importance of monitoring current events. And the prepping community is great. There's lots of great websites out there. There's lots of great feeds on Twitter and social media that you could go through, and kind of alternative media you could look at to kind of get a better pulse on what's going on. Because there may be a time where you have to go from point A to point B before something happens, and that may take a very serious decision, and the impact of that decision may save you or get you caught behind enemy lines, if you will. You see on the news in Philadelphia a pack of 100, 150 kids roaming through the streets. I don't know what the reason was, but they were out beating people up or beating each other up, I don't know, causing trouble. Trump rallies against Trump, people clashing, you getting caught or driving down the street and not knowing that's going on. All of a sudden now you're caught in this incident that you didn't even know was going to happen or going on. What do you do? What do you have? What's your plan? What do you have to defend yourself? How do you get out of it? Do you leave and abandon your vehicle? Do you try to turn and run people over? What do you do? Think about this stuff. Think about where you're going at all times, what you're doing. Is it important that you go to this place today or this week, or can it wait for a better time? Think about every move that you make almost today, because Just going to the store, something can happen. So keep that stuff in mind, guys, and please write in with questions, experiences, life experiences that you've went through. I know a lot of my people that watch my channel have been through a lot. They're law enforcement, they're military, they've been overseas, they've been through disasters, they've been through natural disasters and seen the after effects of that. Chime in on what happened, what changed people from being your friend one minute and your enemy the next minute. Or, how did you react to that? How did you feel when that happened? Let chime in on that and let people let's talk about that and get a dialogue going. I think it's important. But again, guys, Anthony, I'll be signing off right now, and we'll continue this tomorrow. Until then, stay ready, stay safe, God bless, and remember too that our spiritual aspect of prepping is the most important. I do touch on that in a lot of videos, but your spiritual antenna should be telling you to get physically ready as well with your prepping. Okay? Thanks for watching. Here's another kit that we'll show tomorrow that I take everywhere with me. Wasn't hard to build. Just bought the bag, the Maxpedition bag, and built it. Could save my life someday. Think about it. Anthony signing off. God bless. Stay ready.